Cave diving. I don't know what cave diving is. Cave diving is you go caving and that's diving. The most painful cave deaths ever by the painter explain damn. The paint explainer.
Cueva, Los Angeles
Let's
tragedy.
go.
On May 30th, 1999, Francis Reyes, an experienced National Cave Rescue Commission guide, led 17 people into Cueva, Los Angeles in Puerto Rico. Among them was Elba Vasquez Gonzalez. The group entered the cave shortly after noon, and the group followed a stream passage that initially seemed safe. As they went deeper, Reyes noticed the stream's flow got stronger. The group didn't know that heavy rain had fallen in faraway mountains, sending water rushing through the cave. Feeling danger, Reyes decided to take the group toward higher ground. As the water level started to rise, the gentle stream became a dangerous current and panic set in. He told everyone to climb a steep rocky slope leading to an upper passage. Reyes and Vasquez were last. As they approached the slope, Vasquez had trouble keeping her balance on the slick ground and fell. The current swept her downstream right away. Her head struck the cave wall and she lost consciousness.
Wait, the water ain't that tall, right?
The dangerous water immediately. Fighting against the current, he reached Vasquez and grabbed her with one arm while bracing against rocks with the other. Struggling against the powerful flow, he made his way back to the slope with Vasquez still unconscious. When he reached the bottom of the slope, he was almost too tired to move. Using his last bit of strength, he lifted Vasquez up, and the group pulled her to safety on dry ground above. As Reyes attempted to climb up himself, a huge wave surged through the passage. It struck him with tremendous force, breaking his grip on the rocks. Vasquez, now conscious, reached for him desperately. Their fingers briefly touched before the current pulled him beyond reach as he was swept away into the cave. The other guy led the group to a dry chamber higher in the cave, and they waited there together, making sense of what just happened while Vasquez sat apart from the group, crying. Rescuers arrived by dawn, but struggled.
I know that
Hours
guilt.
later,
That's
they reached the trapped group
man,
and rescued them. Despite her injuries, Vasquez insisted on walking out without assistance.
Oh my God, no, the guilt. You don't understand the guilt you have to live if he didn't make it, bro. No. All because you can't keep her from
Vasquez was taken to the hospital where she was found to be in good condition, but unfortunately, Reyes's body was recovered downstream later that day. Roaring River Cave.
She gonna live with that guilt for the rest of her life. Somebody saved you, but that person did not make it.
October 14th, 2022, a team of cave divers came to explore the underwater passages of Roaring River Cave in Missouri. This cave was challenging to dive as its underwater passages went down steeply, requiring special diving skills and equipment. The team had specific jobs. 2 divers would go to the deepest parts of the cave. Eric Hahn, a 27-year-old diver, would work with another diver, which we'll call Marty, to place extra air tanks at 130 feet and 190 feet below the surface.
Oh, just in case. That's smart, just in case.
If needed. Hahn used a special breathing device called a rebreather. This equipment reuses breathing gas by removing carbon dioxide and adding oxygen as needed, allowing divers to stay underwater longer. At 11:12 a.m., Hahn entered the water and started following the guideline. As he went deeper, it got colder and darker, with only his dive lights showing the way. 12 minutes later, Hahn reached the 190-foot point. He briefly met with another diver who later said Hahn seemed fine with no signs of trouble. Just 1 minute later, though, something went wrong. Hahn suddenly crashed into his partner Marty and began swimming up quickly, which is dangerous at that depth. Marty knew this was an emergency and followed Hahn to help. Marty caught up when Hahn hit a rocky ceiling at 165 feet. Hahn was struggling with his breathing equipment. The situation got worse when Hahn pulled out his mouthpiece without closing it, letting water into his breathing system. These convulsions matched the signs of oxygen poisoning, which happens when a diver breathes too much oxygen at depth. Marty tried to hold Hahn while managing both the convulsing diver and the emergency mouthpiece, but they ended up sinking to the bottom at 204 feet. The water
leave him, man. You sorry, man. You gotta leave him.
Their struggle stirred up silt from the cave floor, and eventually, it became too dangerous for Marty to continue the rescue. He couldn't see the guideline anymore. He was getting tired, and his own air supply was running low. Meanwhile, another diver had gone up to get help. Marty, forced to give up the rescue attempt, started going back up and met another team member during a safety stop. This diver tried to go down to help Hahn, but faced the same problems. Cloudy water,
we got call rescue.
Safety line, and dangerously high oxygen levels at that depth. Just 23 minutes after Hahn entered the water, another team member saw Marty coming back without Hahn. The surface manager stopped any more rescue attempts, telling all divers to complete their safety stops and exit safely. Rescue operations began at 4 p.m., almost 5 hours after Hahn entered the waters, when the Missouri Highway Patrol diving team arrived. They found Hahn's body at about 200 feet deep. When examined, Han's main mouthpiece was open and out of his mouth. His backup mouthpiece, instead, was in his mouth with a small air leak. His tank still had air, showing he didn't run out of breathing gas. Cave diving experts found
we
that
got
Hans
equipment
seems to have
malfunction.
miscalculated how deep he could safely go with his breathing gases. His main gas didn't have enough helium for diving at those depths,
my
making him more
God.
likely to get nitrogen narcosis. Besides, Han had also been manually adding too much oxygen to his system at 190 feet. Even small
I never
emissions
heard of
oxygen
that.
can quickly reach dangerous levels at depth, possibly causing the oxygen
So if you breathe in too much oxygen at a certain depth, you get oxygen poisoning? I never heard of that.
that was noted. Doo-doo Cave
Oxygen
tragedy.
poisoning, okay.
On February 9th, 2019, two Italian divers, Carlo Basso and Carlo Barbieri, went to explore the famous El Dudu cave system in the Dominican Republic. This underwater cave is known for its maze-like passages and beautiful scenery that attracts many divers.
El Dudu.
Barbieri went to explore the famous El Dudu cave system in the Dominican Republic. This underwater cave is known for its maze-like passages and beautiful scenery that attracts many divers. Neither Basso nor Barbieri had proper training for cave diving, as they only had regular open water diving experience. By 11:50 a.m., they had entered the water. At first, their dive went smoothly as they swam deeper into the cave. As they went further, though, the cave became darker and narrower. Then they made a critical mistake. They left the main guideline and entered a side passage. These side paths are more dangerous, which is why they're set apart from the main line. As they moved through this narrow space, they stirred up fine dirt from the cave floor. The clear water quickly turned dirty, and they couldn't see anything. Their lights only bounced off the floating dirt particles, making them useless. Things quickly got worse. They had lost the main guideline. Every move they made stirred up more dirt, making them even more confused. They couldn't even use hand signals to communicate because of how badly cloudy the water was. Each panicked breath used up their air supply faster. The situation became deadly when Basso's front air tank got tangled in the cave line. As he struggled to move, the line broke, cutting off their only reliable way back to the exit. They were now trapped in an unknown passage with no clear way out and running out of air. When the divers didn't return by mid-afternoon, people waiting on land became
Yep, go on, call him now.
Society was called, and two skilled divers, Philip Lehman and Angel Comper, started searching for them. The rescuers soon found cloudy water, the first sign of trouble. Then, they discovered a broken guideline leading into a narrow, dirt-filled passage. The water was so cloudy, they had to feel their way through. After hours of searching, they had to turn back without finding the missing divers. The search continued the next day. On February 12th, 3 days after Basso and Barbieri entered the cave, rescuers found one of them. Carlo Barbieri's body was stuck in a narrow side passage, in a spot so tight that even the rescue divers had trouble reaching him. His gear was working fine, which means he likely ran out of air or drowned. The rescuers couldn't get his body out because the passage was too narrow and decided to leave the body there. By February 21st, after searching for nearly 2 weeks, the local team stopped looking. The risks were too great, and there was little hope of finding Basso alive. Two American divers, Ed Sorensen and Mike Young, experts in cave rescue, were called to help. After getting permission from worried local officials, Sorensen and Young had 8 days to complete their mission. Using special equipment, including a harness for tight spaces and a 4-point anchor system, they carefully moved into the narrow passage where Barbieri was found. Then, they discovered Basso's body the next day, stuck in a narrow passage beyond where they found Barbieri.
You know how bad it is that people got to bring their professionals from another country to help? Bro, how narrow is that cave, though? That tells me if there's like $1 billion in that cave, I still wouldn't go. Let me tell y'all something. If there was $1 billion in that cave, will y'all still go?
Barbieri. Both bodies were eventually retrieved. Deepholder Sink 2. On May 11, 1990, in Hernando County, Florida, 25-year-old Michael Spears and his diving partner Daniel, age 34, prepared to dive into Deepholder Sink 2, one of Florida's most dangerous underwater cave systems. Michael had earned his cave diving certification just 5 months earlier, even though he had completed 75 cave dives. Daniel, however, had over 10 years of experience. Unfortunately, recent rains had reduced visibility, but this didn't stop them. After checking their gear, they entered the water. They carefully moved through the narrow entrance into the main cave. By the time they reached the junction room, the water had become very cloudy. They could barely see a few feet ahead with their lights. They relied on the guideline, a thin rope that helps divers find their way in caves. When they reached the upper circuit line, the water cleared slightly. They adjusted their gear, gave each other okay hand signals, and began going deeper into the cave system. As they went past 200 feet deep, breathing became harder. The compressed air felt heavier in their lungs. At this depth, divers can get nitrogen narcosis, which is like being drunk underwater as it slows thinking and reactions. Halfway through their dive, Daniel noticed
Why y'all not
something
going back?
wrong. Michael had drifted below the guideline. At first, it was just a few feet, but then he went down faster, as if being pulled. His movements became weird. They were already near 250 feet deep, approaching the same junction room as before, where they would have to go back through the muddy water. When they reached the junction room once again, visibility dropped to 0. Michael reached for the guideline twice and missed. Panic set in. Disoriented, he turned the wrong way, back into the cave instead of toward the exit. Daniel lost sight of him immediately. Michael was fighting for his life. He saw what he thought was a guideline and followed it, unknowingly swimming deeper into an isolated chamber called the downstream bottom. The increasing depth made breathing harder as carbon dioxide built up in his blood. His vision darkened at the edges, and it was becoming clear that it was the beginning of a depth-induced blackout. When his buoyancy failed, he sank and lost consciousness before reaching the bottom. Meanwhile, Daniel completed his required safety stops to prevent decompression sickness, a process needed to let nitrogen safely exit the body. At his 30-foot stop, Daniel looked around for Michael but couldn't see him. By the time he reached the surface, other divers had arrived. They went back into the cave, following the guideline to the junction room, but couldn't find Michael. The next morning,
why you not keep your hands on the guideline?
Operation. They carefully followed the guideline to the junction room and into the lower circuit, moving slowly to avoid stirring up more sediment. After hours of searching, at 241 feet deep, they found Michael lying face down. His regulator remained in his mouth and his mask in place, signs he had blacked out before realizing he was in danger. His oxygen tank was still half full. The search took 7 hours. The rescue team secured his body and brought him to the surface. Experts concluded that nitrogen narcosis and depth-induced blackout were...
He said, wait, after 7 hours, his tank is still half full? Hey, that's a W, whoever built that tank.
...by carbon dioxide buildup had caused Michael's death. Weeki-Washi Springs.
He didn't make it so.
Cheddar's is serving up American classics.
But I'm taking a break from meat.
2012, at Weeki-Washi Springs, Florida, 29-year-old experienced diver Marcin Kay was working with the Karst Underwater Research Team to explore and map the underwater caves in the park. After checking their diving equipment, Kay and his team entered the water and started following the guideline. The team moved together in the dark water, studying the cave at depths over 100 feet. They kept a steady pace to avoid getting too much nitrogen in their blood. After finishing their work and starting to come back up, Kay stayed close to the guideline, but around 4:30 p.m., something changed. As they got near the cave exit, Kay suddenly swam away from the guideline. He went up into a tight crack in the rock, a space so narrow that divers with tanks on their sides would have trouble fitting through.
Why would you leave the guideline?
Weird. The other divers noticed and tried to signal him with their lights, flashing them to tell him to stop. Since that didn't work, they tried tapping him, but Kay didn't respond normally. He pushed farther into the narrow crack, twisting his body to get through.
Stretch your neck.
Safety divers nearby couldn't do anything as Kay squeezed himself deeper into the
Stop!
After 5 minutes, they saw his breathing regulator wasn't in his mouth anymore. The team immediately called for help, but the narrow crack made it very hard to reach Kay.
What are you doing? What was he doing? Did he like panic? Why? Bro, yeah, he freaking panicked. Yeah, he panicked. He knew that way wasn't narrow. Why would he go further? If this signal with the light don't work, you gotta freaking twist his freaking ankle or something. I would put his leg in a Courage Angel lock.
Reached him. It was too late. He wasn't responding, even though his tanks still had plenty of air and his equipment was working fine. He had passed out and drowned in the tight space where he was stuck. Kay's body was brought to the surface just before 5 p.m. After the accident, the Karst team explained that Kay didn't deliberately leave the guideline and swim into the crack. They explained he had an air bubble in the blood vessels of his brain, a condition caused by coming up too quickly, which can make a diver confused and unable to think clearly. Paradise Springs tragedy.
Really?
On September 22nd, 1996, at Paradise Springs, Florida, two friends, which can make a diver confused and unable to think clearly.
So you telling me you can have an air bubble in your brain? So you get an air bubble in your brain, you start to come up faster, you start to like get hallucinations and stuff. So it's like underwater drunk. You just get hallucinations and just getting dizzy and you just come up fast and you can't think right, I guess. That's how it is.
On September 22nd, 1996, at Paradise Springs, Florida, two friends, Jake Miller and Lisa Carter, went diving in an underwater cave. Both knew how to dive in open water, but had no training for cave diving specifically, and to make things worse, they didn't bring a safety line to find their way back. They entered the cave and descended 60 feet when they turned on their flashlights to see as they headed towards the passages. Jake went first, with Lisa following. As they went deeper, the passage got narrower. At 148 feet, they had gone deeper than they planned, but they kept going. Suddenly, Jake kicked up dirt from the cave floor by accident, clouding the water, and within seconds, they couldn't see anything. Lisa tried to grab Jake but couldn't find him in the cloudy water. Jake, lost and unable to see, started to panic. He breathed faster, using up his air quickly. While feeling around for a way out, his hand found a narrow crack in the rock.
No,
He tried to
go
squeeze
back.
through it, but his air tank and straps got stuck in the tight space. He couldn't move, couldn't see, and was completely lost in the dark. Meanwhile, Lisa felt movement in the water. She thought the cave might be falling in, so she quickly decided to swim back
Yes.
to the surface.
Yeah,
After
smart.
reaching safety,
Smart.
she called for help right away. Back in the cave, Jake was struggling to stay alive. His chest was pushed against the rock, his shoulders stuck in the crack. With his
Bro.
air running low, he
Why you didn't
desperately
go
worked
like
to take
that?
off his straps and eventually got free from his tank. He was no longer stuck, but now had no air supply and no light in the dark,
Oh my
cloudy
God.
water. Jake pushed
That's
away
the
from the
worst way
rock
to die.
and tried to swim up to reach the surface. Rescue divers came within an hour. They went into the cave
Now,
and searched
ain't
through
making
the
it.
cloudy water. They found that the cave had not collapsed as first reported. They found Jake's body in the crack, but he wasn't stuck anymore. Investigators realized that after freeing himself by taking off his tank and straps, Jake tried to swim to the surface. As he went up, the air in his lungs expanded and likely caused a bubble in his blood, making him pass out before he could reach safety. His body was found
Oh
floating in the
my
water
God.
at 144 feet deep. Lisa survived and later admitted they hadn't taken the risks seriously enough. If you liked this video, subscribe for similar ones or join my Discord to suggest another.
You got no experience. You went down further than you thought. You had a hard time breathing, but you will still go instead of just turning back. I know you can't. Well, I can't blame him because he can't see nothing. I got no words. I never been in that situation, so you never know. Like people like panic so much they do different stuff.
Let's say this. If there was like $50 million inside a cave where there's water present, where you go and find it? What?